So,
Mhm.
hi.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Well, yeah, I'm Patrick. I'm 22 years old. I come from Lebanon, and I'm a physiotherapist student. I'm actually doing my doctorate degree right now, and I have a huge interest for languages and personal development and other things as well.
How long ago have you started learning languages?
Well, it started off, I would say, like 4 or 5 years ago. When I first started off was German, and I didn't really know how to do that. I didn't know how to learn German, so I started off with buying myself some books, but I got stuck with books, and then I just couldn't figure out how to speak German. Then I started developing my methods, my own methods, and this is what I used to learn all of my other languages afterwards.
Wait, so you learned German? Did you learn English before German?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, English was always on the media. You just pick up English and start speaking. It's as simple as that.
Since when are you learning English?
I think since school, since I was at school.
Oh, right.
We took English at school, yeah.
So I guess I can introduce myself. I am Denny Minsaev. I am 18 years old myself, and I'm from Russia. My major at university is Japanese, or more specifically, it's Eastern Studies, and my department is Japanese. I actually switched my specialty. My major. It was computer science, but then
Mhm.
I found that very, very boring, and I switched to Japanese, which I have been learning since January of last year. So I was still in school when I started learning Japanese.
Mhm.
Um, well, uh, my native language is actually Chechen, which that was the first language I've ever learned. My parents come from Chechnya, so I'm Chechen myself. And afterwards, I was taught Russian because, um, because I needed to speak with other people. In the beginning, it was kindergarten. I couldn't understand anyone, and neither could anyone understand me. So I was taught Russian then, and because I couldn't, like, there isn't too much opportunity to use Chechen for me. I can only use it with family. Um, but we mostly speak Russian. So over the years, I've forgotten it almost completely. In the recent years, I've been trying to use it a little bit more with my mother, but I'm not that good at it. I think sometime when I'm older, I'll actually sit down and study it in depth, just like with Japanese and like with German.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I guess I have two native languages, Russian and Chechen, because I live in Russia and because I am Chechen. So yeah, and in terms of foreign languages, my first language was also English, but then aside from that, it was Japanese.
And how long did it take you to learn Japanese?
Well, I can't really say that I learned Japanese. I'm still learning it a lot. I think I can say that I became more or less comfortable with Japanese somewhere in the beginning of this year. Um, now I can talk about various topics, and I feel quite comfortable with the language, I can say. But there's still so much to learn. And I've actually signed up. Have you ever heard of the JLPT test?
No, not quite. What is it? What is it about?
It's the Japanese language proficiency test. And I've signed up for the test this summer. And there's 5 levels, and I've applied for the medium one, the third one.
Okay. How many levels are there?
5 levels.
5 levels.
So there's I'm still not at the level to pass the test. I still need to prepare a lot until the test comes. So there's a lot of incentive to learn more, I guess I can say.
Did you have a hard time to integrate in this Japanese culture? I mean, is it important for you to learn about the culture before learning a language?
Not really. I think it just went along, like it went together with me for me. I started learning Japanese in January, and then I almost immediately met a friend in like February. Actually, that person contacted me first because they found me on italki, and ever since we met, we keep speaking almost every week on Skype, and that's very helpful. He's also learning Russian, so that's how he contacted me, because he saw a Russian speaker who is learning Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we just speak Japanese, and for his practice, he reads a lot of news in Russian, and what he does is he shows me different articles that he found, and I help him translate them, and especially he struggles a little bit with the Russian pronunciation. It's quite difficult, especially because Japanese has kind of a limited like sound palette. I think you say that right?
Yeah.
And I help him with the pronunciation.
Oh, cool.
Can you tell us about your languages first?
My languages, my strongest languages, I would say Arabic, French, and Spanish. So I grew up here in Lebanon speaking Arabic, and I had French as well, because France was here in Lebanon in the 1920s. So I picked up French. I picked up Spanish as well, because both my grandmas are come from Spanish-speaking countries. So I also grew up speaking with them, and I picked up the language pretty much fast. Those are my strongest languages, I would say. The other ones that comes next will be German, Italian, and Portuguese. And then I learned quite a few afterwards.
Mm-hmm. What are like all of the languages that you can say you speak? I'm aware that there are some languages that you're still learning, but what are languages that you can say that you speak them?
Like the languages that I'm really, really comfortable in, or would be...
You can just have a conversation.
Yeah, that would be Arabic, English, French, Spanish, German, and Italian, and Portuguese. I would say all the Romance languages.
What's your native language?
Arabic and French and Spanish.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. All three of them.
Interesting.
But like my native is Arabic, because I grew up here in Lebanon. So yeah, it would be Arabic, to be fair.
I was going to ask you, like I'm kind of a bit frustrated with some of the Romance languages, because like especially the group Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian, because they're very, very similar, right? And at least, for example, French, it at least sounds quite different, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if I were to learn some of the languages from the group, like from Portuguese, Italian, and Spanish, I wouldn't want to learn all of them, because they're just so similar. Do you ever get confused?
I mean, it can get a little bit confusing. At just learning the languages right from the start, both of them right from the start, it can get confusing. As well, if you have one language that you've learned very good, let's say I speak very good French and I'm learning Italian, I can get a little bit confused with my Italian at first. But what I try to do is that I try to develop right from the start a personality for the language. So I try to develop emotions and feelings for the language. It's complicated, but there is no book that can teach you how to separate those languages. It's a little bit of a psychological thing to do. So what I try to do right from the start is I try to develop a certain character in the language. I start developing emotions, feelings for each and every language. So they get a little bit separated for me. It's not just in terms of, in terms of words and pronunciation, but it also works on your psychological as well. So when I Spanish and I want to switch into French, like my whole personality will change, the whole body language, the way I move, the way I feel, the way my emotions are being evoked. Everything is going to change, and this helps me a lot. And I grew up developing character for each and every language in order for me not to get confused with the languages. So this is what I actually do. This is what helps me a lot get through the languages and not get confused with them.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's the main technique I've been using for improving pronunciation and for like not getting confused by them.
Can you give an example of like what your perception of Spanish is as opposed to Italian?
Okay, like Spanish, everything would change. I mean, your mouth is a bit like you speak and your mouth is not really how you say, it's not closed. Your mouth is like really, you speak like with your tongue up and down, going up and down. Like I would feel like my body is, I can dance with Spanish, But with Italian, it's a bit more musical. It's a little bit more, I see more bright colors maybe while speaking Italian. It's very complicated how to describe it, but
you probably have a very good like feeling of the language in your mind, right?
I mean, yeah. What I try to do is I try to feel the language as much as possible. In particular, when I want to speak with people, right before I start with engaging in a conversation, what I would do is I would change myself entirely before getting. It's like you're getting in a role. It's like an acting role that you do. It's like you're switching between modes. So when I'm speaking Spanish, I want to turn into German. Like everything would change, and I would become more strict and more maybe. I developed a certain personality for German as well. I'm a little more aggressive. Well, not aggressive in a pejorative way, but aggressive like strict and more meticulous and more maybe perfectionist. Like, and I cannot imagine myself not doing that before starting to speak German. Like I have to change my entire body language and how I move and how I develop the emotions and everything. So it's really a bit it works on your psychology, I would say. Like there is no book that can teach you how to pronounce these things, how to sound like a native, how to act like a native. There is no book to do that. You just have to feel the language.
Wow, that's very insightful, I have to say. Now that you mention it, I realize that when I speak Japanese, I'm a lot more polite, and I kind of want to be nicer to people. But when I'm speaking English, it's very casual, very laid back, and
Right.
I can definitely feel the difference in how your mind sort of switches when you speak a different language.
Right. Like for instance, once I was driving in my car and there was my friend next to me and he's German and we were speaking the entire time in English. And when I switched to German, really my driving became more aggressive, like very unconsciously. It became aggressive and I started to honk and and it changed, my whole personality, it was altered and affected just by the switching between two languages. And this happens a lot.
So it's not just the way you speak. It's like your whole personality kind of changes.
Yeah. It's everything. I mean, it's everything. You have to feel it running in your body. It's not about just, it's not about the words that come out of your mouth. It's more complicated. It's more complex than that, I would say. It's your entire psychology that changes when you speak the language. Like there are sometimes I can think in a way in German that I cannot think in the same way in English, for example, or in Spanish. So I can only think in this way in German. I developed emotions, I developed ways of thinking, I developed things in this particular language. And this helps me separate the languages and not getting confused by them. This is actually this has become quite useful for me in the course of the last years.
I definitely don't have as much experience as you do, but I can partially relate to what you're saying about the personality changes. Here's an interesting question. What language do you think in?
Depends upon the situation, you know. For every single situation, I can, like, for example, when I'm walking and see something, and I can relate to that in German, maybe. I can think about it in German, and sometimes I can switch to French, sometimes to Arabic. But of course, Arabic will take a huge part in my life because it's my mother tongue. So I think that most of the time it's going to be Arabic, you know, coming into my head, or Spanish maybe most of the time. For the other languages, it depends on the situation. It depends if I'm in the country. I try to think a lot in the language. Like when I went to Greece, I just started to think more in Greek, you know, in order for me to get this good pack of immersion.
You know, to be honest, it's quite an interesting topic to me. Like, since I don't know from what time. It's definitely not something I can keep track of, but from some point in my life, I started mainly. Well, I also use different languages when I think, just subconsciously. Like, there were a couple times. It didn't happen very often, but there were a couple times that I thought something in Japanese, and that was quite interesting to me. And actually, that was a lot. That was quite a bit, like maybe half a year ago. So back then my level wasn't even that good. But I thought something in Japanese, and I never think in Chechen. But from some point on, I started thinking mainly in English, because I got, like, I've been learning English since I was 7. That's when I started going to school. But I really started learning it more intensely when, like, in 2011, I think. That's when I started watching a lot of content on the internet, and I've kind of really gotten, like, I dove into the culture more. I mostly watch content from the US, so and I hear quite a lot that I sound sort of like an American, which I guess makes sense because it's just a lot of influence. I was quite young, well, relatively young, so I just picked up the pronunciation that the people that I was watching had. And from some point on, I started thinking mainly in English, and I remember the exact moment when I realized this. Like, I was sitting in class, and my teacher was asking me something about. She was interested in my level of Chechen, so, and she asked me, "What language do you think in, Chechen or Russian?" And I said, "Actually, it's English," because I realized at that point that I mainly think in English, which is kind of weird because it's not my native language, but it just kind of developed on its own from some point on. Of course, I think in Russian as well sometimes, but not very often. And do you ever talk to yourself when you're alone?
I always talk to myself.
Oh yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
I always try to do those monologues. You know, wherever I am, I try just to do those monologues. Whether I'm driving, whether I'm taking a shower, maybe. I always imagine myself doing a virtual conversation with myself and engaging in a conversation with a virtual person that's sitting right next to me. I always do that. This helps a lot, actually.
I imagine it does.
This helps a lot because, yeah. Do you use that? Do you use that technique?
I don't do it that much. Mostly it's like me reacting to something I'm seeing, or it's just mostly it's me reacting to something, and instead of thinking it in my head, I say it out loud, and it's pretty much all the time I talk to myself in English. What language do you talk to yourself in?
Most of the time, I would say German and Italian.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. Yeah. Like I like to hear myself. You know, I like to hear myself speaking in German. I like to hear how my body changes, how my muscles contract, how everything works in me when I speak in German. it's like every time it's like a different experience when I speak in German.
I can sort of relate to that. I remember, like when I was learning English a lot. Mostly the learning part was just me watching something, and that helped the listening comprehension a lot. And I also practiced speaking myself as well. And I've been making my own videos in English. Pretty much all of my videos were in English until recently when I started making them in Japanese. I was making them since I was like 13, 14. So that helped me a lot in developing my English. I can even, like, if I go back to my older videos, which are they're very bad, but I can see how my English has improved over the years. So it's quite interesting to me. And same goes for Japanese. I remember I started learning it. I was thinking, I need to document this. I need to like be able to keep track of how I'm improving. Yeah. And I've seen, you know, Tim Donor, right?
Yeah.
I've seen his video where he speaks 20 languages, and I just wanted to do that, but in just like make progress of my Japanese. So I made like a video after 2 months, 4 months, 5.5 months, and then 9 months and 1 year. And yesterday I watched the 2 months video, and my Japanese is so bad. I made such stupid mistakes with the grammar and everything, but I'm still very, very glad that I made that video. Actually, out of the language videos that I've made, that's the most popular one so far. So, and I think it's quite interesting to see like the progress. Yeah, the progress. The 2 months video, and then a couple days ago I made the video talking about how I met those Japanese people in the subway. So, wow. And even someone commented that there was a comment in Japanese, and they were saying that I improved a lot since last time.
You should be proud of that.
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
It's very nice. It's always very nice to read the comments, and I try to reply to all of them. I can see the people that are watching my channel, the subscribers, and there are 15 people from Japan, which is really cool. So, yeah, that's quite exciting. Sollten wir ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen?
Ja, natürlicherweise, natürlicherweise. Fangen wir an.
Was ist das?
Let's start. Fangen wir an.
Seit wann lernst du Deutsch?
Ich würde sagen, seit vielleicht, ja, das war die erste Fremdsprache, die ich gelernt habe. Das war seit 5 Jahren ungefähr.
5 Jahren?
5 Jahren, ja. Seit langer Zeit.
Wie lernst du sprechen?
Die Sprachen meinst du?
How do you learn foreign languages?
Wie ich Sprachen lerne. Also ja, am ersten würde ich mir einige Bücher kaufen. Ich bevorzuge diese Audiobücher zu kaufen, weil das gibt mir die Möglichkeit, einfach die Sprache anzuhören und wie das klingt, weißt du. Es ist eine holistische Methode oder eine holistische Approach. Ich weiß nicht, wie man das sagen wird. Und ja, ich höre sehr viel die Sprache, aber nur für 3 bis 6 Monaten, würde ich sagen. Also es hängt drauf ab von der Schwierigkeit der Sprache. Wenn die Sprache sehr schwierig ist, dann wird es ein bisschen länger Zeit dauern. Und wenn es einfach ist oder ähnlich zu einige meiner Sprachen ist, dann vielleicht 3 oder 4 Monaten einfach nur anzuhören. Und danach gehe ich raus den Bücher und versuche ich mal mit den Leuten zu sprechen. und Gesprächen zu führen. Aber das kommt danach.
Mm, Ich, äh, ich verstehe jetzt, dass mein Deutsch ist sehr schlecht. Äh, es ist, äh, es ist sehr, how do you say like terrible?
Schrecklich.
Schrecklich. Es ist sehr, sehr schrecklich.
Aber ich glaube, du hast eine gute Aussprache.
Eine
Ich glaube, du hast eine gute Aussprache.
Aussprache. Was ist?
Aussprache. Pronunciation.
Ist das so?
Ja,
Danke, danke sehr.
ja, bitte.
I even forgot such a simple thing. I really need to spend more time speaking German. I remember I made a video like this with Steve Kaufman when we were speaking English, Russian, and Japanese. And I was also quite embarrassed for my Japanese. But I think, well, I can't say that my Japanese was better back then than my German is now. But, well, I could say, I could talk about something. Something I've noticed about Germans is that they speak quite fast. Like, kind of unusually fast.
Like French, like Frenchmen as well.
I haven't heard,
They tend to speak very, very fast.
really.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to work on my German from now on. I was actually studying, before we made the call, I was going through my Anki words and trying to refresh my knowledge of it, but it wasn't that big of a help.
Next time it'll be much better when we speak German.
I'll make sure that's the case.
Now you have a good motivator.
Yeah. I've barely had any practice speaking German. I have one friend from Germany, but we haven't spoken in a little while. And now you're the second person I know that I can speak German with. So I'll definitely work on it from now on.